This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome back to those who are joining us again after the Yom Tif and Parshas Lecha. Tonight we're going to do a fascinating subject, the subject of a almost unknown individual whose name actually does not appear anywhere in the Tanakh. And let's begin with the beginning of the Parsha. So Avinu is 75 years old, and the Rebbe Shem comes to him, and he tells him, Lech Lecha, go out, leave your homeland. Chaim Volozhiner writes in Pirkei Avos, if ever a Jew has a chukah to suddenly pick up and go to Eretz Yisrael, it comes from the fact that Avinu implanted this desire into the DNA, the spiritual DNA of the Yid. So Avinu picks himself up, and we encounter something very interesting. Vayavar Avram ba'aretz ad mekoim shechem ad Eloin moira. Avram passed through the land. Where? Until the place of Shechem. Now, you go to most people who are in Eretz Yisrael for Sukkot, and you ask them, what was your first stop? I don't know, most people, their first stop, maybe the Kaisal Hamaravi, or maybe of Al Ha'esh, you know, they picked up something to eat, but I don't even know if Shechem is on the itinerary. That might be for security reasons. I think you can make arrangements and go to Shechem. That's a place I haven't been. I would like to go there, you know. But interesting, Avraham Avinu's first stop should be Shechem. That's a rather odd first stop. You would think he went to Shar HaShamayim, he went to Yerushalayim, Chevron, Tzfas, Tveria, Chves, you know, one of the holy cities. Shechem? Why does he go to Shechem? Says Rashi, Lehispalel al bnei Yaakov, to pray for the sons of Yaakov, K'sheyavoyu lehilachem l'Shechem, when they come to wage war against Shechem. And by the way, Rashi, Taich's Eloin Moireh is also Shechem. And he was shown the place of Har Grizim and Har Evel. But bottom line is, it still should trouble a person. Why would Avram Avinu's first stop be Shechem? Like, this is the most critical. Avram Avinu has never been to Eretz Yisrael. So why Shechem? Why is this his first stop? So we come to a very interesting Gemara, the Gemara in Bava Basra, Daf Tzadik Aleph Amid Aleph. The Gemara gives us a list of people whose names do not appear in the Tanakh. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Chanan Barava Amarav. Ime da Avraham. What was the name of the mother of Avraham?
That
was a rhetorical question, but I'm glad that you know.
Karnebo.
Says the Gemara, Amasla'i Bas Karnebo. Surprisingly, you would think this wouldn't be known, but people know this. People know this. Somebody told me I was giving a shiur in the morning, and somebody said their mother, for 80 years ago, would say over, the mother of Avraham Avinu is Amasla'i Bas Karnebo. Okay, that's her name. Why do I need to know that's her name? Why is that her name? What kind of name is that? What were her parents thinking? These are all questions we have to address. What kind of name is Amaslai Bas Karnebo?
What follows next is
Ime de Haman, the mother of Haman. This nobody knows.
who wants to know that?
Amaslai Bas Urvasi. Also, the name was Amaslai.
Who wants to know that? What's important about that?
I want to know that. Amaslai Bas Urvasi. It's interesting. You have two people. Avraham's mother is Amaslai. Haman's mother is Amaslai. Says the Gemara V'simanach, the way to remember is, how do you know which one is Bas Karnevai, which one is Bas Urvasi? The way to remember it is, Tameh, Tahar, Tahar. It depends which one is Tameh. If you come from the name which is Tameh, you're Tameh. If you come from a name which is Tahar, you're Tahar. And that is Karnevai, is a Lashon Rashi says, of Karim, fattened sheep. And therefore fattened sheep are very kosher. You know, lamb chops, it's good meat. So if your grandmother, if you're an Amaslai, Bas, lamb chops, Bas Karnevai, so then you're kosher. So the Avraham Avinu was kosher. But if you're Amaslai, Bas Urvasi, if you're Amaslai, the daughter of the raven, then you're treif. Fine. The Gemara continues. Ime de David, the mother of David, Nitzeves Bas Adoel. Nitzavas, the daughter of Adoel. Okay, Shema. Ime de Shimshain, the mother of Shimshain. Tzila Lefinus. Say that 10 times. Yeah? Tzila Lefinus. By the way, Va'achte Nashyan, and his sister's name was Nashyan. So now the Gemara asks the $1 million question, L'may nafkamin, who cares? Who cares what Avraham Avinu's mother's name was? Who cares what Haman's mother's name was? Who cares what David's mother's name was? Who cares what Shimshon's mother? And even more troubling now, why are we saying Shimshon's sister? Says the Gemara, L'tshuvas haminim, to be able to respond to Api Karsim. Because you know that when you're in the boxing rink with the min, the first question they're going to fire at you is, what was Avraham Avinu's name? And you better be prepared. So this way you'll be able to whip out of your pocket, Amasla'i bas Karnebo. Then they say, really? So what was Haman's mother's name? And then you're going to be able to say also, Oichet Amasla'i bas Orvasi. Then you're going to say, well, what was David? So Rashi explains, we know Yitzchak's mother's name, we know Yaakov's mother's name, we know the Imahos' mother's names. So why is it that we don't know the mother of Avraham Avinu? So here the Gemara is providing us with this answer. And another question, Rashi says the mother of Haman was just brought in Agavorcha. And why don't we know the mother of David? We know the mother of all the other Malachim. Why don't we know David's mother? So the Gemara is supplying us with the answer. And Shimshon, you know, the Navi speaks at length about Shimshon's father, Shimshon's mother. Why don't we know her name? We know her name. Her name is Tzalala Finus. And why do we have to know Shimshon's sister? Agavorcha. Which is also a little bit difficult because we don't say Avraham Avinu's sister or Haman's sister. You know, wouldn't you want to know what was Haman? Who was the baby sister that Haman fought with when he was younger? No, the Gemara doesn't give us that information. By the way, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, just as an aside, nothing to do with today's shiur, has a wondrous explanation on this Gemara, and that is, many of these individuals mentioned here are historic figures, or the most historic figures in Klal Yisrael, be it Rosh Umasenu, Avraham Avinu, or be it Melech Mashiach, David HaMelech, or be it Shimshon, who is Kadosh Merechem, and you may make the mistake, or the Minim would make the mistake. You see, you have a question on us, how we believe in the Yozel was born from the Immaculate Conception. You also have the same thing in your religion. You know what? You don't know who Avram's mother was. He was also immaculately conceived. And Shimshon also was, you know, the woman couldn't get pregnant her whole life, and an angel come down from heaven. Who do you think impregnated the woman? Must have been an angel. She was not this was not a natural birth. You don't even know the mother's name. So therefore the Gemara specifically wants to tell us to respond to the minim. These people had a mother of flesh and blood. They were born of basar v'dam. That's how Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky learns this particular Gemara. But we're going to explain it kipshutai tonight. Rashi learns the tshuvas haminim, that the minim are going to ask us, why don't we know the names of the mothers of these historic figures? And we'll be able to answer them. Look in the Ravid in Bava Basra, number 5, the Ravid says that the Minim are going to ask us, why don't we know the names of these people? And we'll be able to respond, we do know them. They're not recorded, they're not written, we know them based on Nevuah. Rabbeinu Gershon writes, Rabbeinu Gershon on Masechta Bava Basra says, it's to teach us that nothing is beyond the purview of the Chachamim. All the Chachmei Hashas know everything. They even know the names of Avram's mother, of David's mother, as the pasuk says in Tehillim, Soid Hashem Lireyav, God teaches His secret to those who fear Him. The Shita Mekubetzes also says and understands that this Gemara is one of the sources of the veracity of the Torah Shabbat Peh. Because when we talk about the Minim over here, what kind of minim we're talking about? We're talking about minim who challenge the authenticity of the Torah Shabbat Peh. They say, you know, whatever is in the written law, that's Amasla'i, but how do we know that the oral law is true? So they ask us, what's the name of Abraham's mother? So we tell them the name, Amaslai bas Karnebo. They said, how do you know that? We say, just like we know everything, we have an oral tradition. And the same way, you're going to have to accept that this is our oral tradition regarding the mother of Avraham Avinu and David HaMelech and Shimshon HaGibar, except the other oral traditions that we have. Okay. Comes the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem says that there's another interesting and important reason to know the name of Avraham Avinu's mother. And that is, there's a concept of mazalais. That even though in Moed Katan it says, Ein mazal Yisrael, but actually it doesn't say that. It says, Banei chaye umezoynei lav bezchusa talya milsa ela b'mazla. A person's family, a person's life a person's food and parnasa is not dependent on your zchus, it's dependent on your mazel. You're born in a good mazel, you'll have a good life. You're born in a bad mazel, things will be bad. Tosfos asks, what do you mean, ein mazel Yisrael? So Tosfos says, no, a person's life is definitely affected by the mazel that they're born, but with a zchus gedola you could overcome it. That's Tosfos. So even though we like to say ein mazel Yisrael, it's not really true. We are affected by mazalos, but we could change it. We could overcome it. Even Avraham Avinu was affected by his mazal. Rebbeinu Shalom took him out. Say may it's stagnisa shalom. Now, today's shiur is called "Be a Mikubal in Your Own Home." Okay, it's like try it at home Kabbalah. One of those things, Now, the truth is, don't try this at home. I'm just joking. But the first, look, if you get good at it, you might be able to do it as you might be able to moonlight as a makubal on the side. You never know how successful you'll get at this. So the first thing we want to know, I remember they once had this Jewish program, and they had some kind of like so-called makubal on the answering phone calls, and they had these innocent children, these kids from Borough Park calling up, and they wanted to know what life has in store for them. So they would say their birthday. And on the other end, you could hear like this book flipping. Wow. Oh, you're born on Yud Aleph Shvat. You hear like this book flipping, and Yud Aleph Shvat, and he would say you're gonna. But the poor little girl said Yud Gimel Shvat. So he told him a whole prediction and said no, Yud Gimel. Oh, Yud Gimel Shvat. And then the book flips back. Okay, but that's what we're gonna do tonight. How do you figure out what mazel you're born under? So it says about Shem, it's all based on your name, and it's based on your mother's name. You can't just figure it out based on your own name. You have to figure it out based on your mother's name. So therefore we need to know. Avraham Avinu, what was his mazel? Haman, what was his mazel? And by the way, we know Avram's mazel was tzedek, the Gemara says. Haman, on the other hand, Haman's mazel was madim. There's 7 different mazalos you could be born under. And the Gemara even says that your mazel will affect what you do for a living. If you're born under madim, you're going to kill people. So either, the Gemara says, you're going to become a butcher, or a moyel, or a rabbi, the Gemara says. The Gemara says that, right? Because the Rabbanan also, Rav Aaron Cutler said that the reason why he would have to go fundraising all over the world is sometimes somebody who gives shiurim publicly, somebody asks a question, you give an answer, and they might be embarrassed, so you killed somebody b'shoigeg. So he would say he had to go collecting, that was his galus. Okay, but be it as it may, the Gemara says David HaMelech is born under Mazel Madim. Now, there's a Perush.
What is Madim?
Madim is Mars.
And Abraham's Madim?
Tzedek. What is that?
Neptune.
I'm not sure. Again, this is not. I'm a pulpit rabbi. I'm not a sidekick. I'm not a makubal. You have to ask a makubal, I'm just reporting a few tidbits of information that I happen to have seen. But I don't do this on the side. I do omnes nekiya v'kala. I give a few shiurim.
What's July 8th?
What? July? I need a Hebrew date, Okay, so Rav Sadia going. Okay, Rav Sadia going. I don't know. I see a lot of good friends here tonight. I'm in a happy mood. Rav Sadia going, in his commentary to the Sefer Yetzirah, he says if you want to know your mazel, he says like this: you figure out your name, you add up your gematria. So I don't know, my gematria, whatever it is. Okay, so you figure out your name and you add your mother's name and you divide it by 7, and the remainder you'll be able to figure out your mazel. You have 7 choices: Shabtoi, Tzedek, Madim, Chama, Noiga, Koichav, Levana. You could be Saturn, you could be Mars, you could be the moon, you could be the stars, you could be whatever it is. You could be. So says Reb Sadia Goin, if your gematria of your name and your mother's name is divisible by 7, so you know that you're a moon guy. If there's a remainder of 2, you're a tzedek guy. Avraham Avinu bas ben Amaslai, he is tzedek. Haman is a madim, but says the sefer. The Sefer Einei Yitzchak, this is quoted by Rabbi Chiel Michal Stern in his Sefer Otzar HaYediyos. Chiel Michal Stern, I believe, is the Rav, the Mardas of Ezra's Torah. So he says that we need to know the mother of Avraham Avinu, we need to know the mother of Haman. Because if we don't know their mother, and we just take Abraham's name by itself, we just take Haman's name by itself, so then they both are at the same mazel. They would both come out, it would seem that they both have the same mazel. They both are divisible by 7. However, now that we add Amasla'i to Abraham and Amasla'i to Haman, so I don't get the whole thing, because how does it help to add Amasla'i to both? They both have the exact same mother's name. So I'm not exactly sure what he's saying. But again, now that you have the information, you talk to your people to explain to you exactly what this means. Just explaining, this is how the Einei Yitzchak, based on Rabbi Sadia Goin, explains this Gemara in Baba Basra, why we need to know the names of the mother of Avraham and the mother of Haman. Comes the Heilige Chassam Sofer. And the Chassam Sofer explains also a deeper meaning of what is the response to the Apikarsim. The Apikarsim want to know what is Avraham Avinu's mother's name, and we need to know this to respond to the Apikarsim. Why exactly do we need to know this? Says the Chassam Sofer, a big question that the Minim ask us, the big question that the Apikarsim ask us is, there's a lot of extra information in the Torah, most notably the mother of Amalek. Anybody know who's the mother of Amalek? Timna. Timna. So the Apikarsim, you know how it is. You're walking down the street, and this guy, he has a sign on him, Apikaris, that guy, he comes to you, and he says, why does it say Amalek's mother's name in the Torah? Who cares? Timna. It's useless information. So you know how we respond to them? We say, Reb Apikaris, I have something to tell you. You think that's useless? What do you think the Torah should have wrote more? The name of Amalek's mother, the name of Avraham's mother. So the Apikaris, he's not a shoita, he's just an Apikaris. You have to be a chacham to be now. You can't just, you're not eligible to be Apikaris if you're a fool. You have to be something to be an Apikaris. They used to say, the Rebbe say, nowadays nobody's nothing. Everybody, nowadays when it snows 6 inches. And when it's hot, it's like 90 degrees. It used to be in Amaldik at Saitin when it was hot, it was 130 degrees. And when it was cold, it would snow like 4 feet. There are no tzaddikim, there are no Rishayim. It used to be in the olden days, you had real Rishayim, real Apikarsim. If you have a real Apikars could be something one day. A fake, nowadays everyone's parav. Everyone just goes with it. Nah, only a real Apikars. That's why, by the way, in Navardik they would say that Rivka was pregnant, and she didn't know. She didn't know what was going on. When she passed by the shuls, so the kid was kicking to come out. When she passed by the houses of Avodah Zarah, the kid was kicking to come out. So she's all distressed. What's going to be with this kid? So she goes to Yeshiva Shem Be'ever. So, you know what they say? Don't worry! You're going to have the Gadol Adar, and you're going to have Hitler! Baruch Hashem, Menuchas HaNefesh. How exactly did the Besura that she's going to have a Hitler calm her down? You know what she thought? It says Alter Navardik. She thought she was going to have a wishy-washy kid. That when the friends want to go to the learning program, he goes to the learning program. And when the friends want to go to the movies, goes to the movies. A wishy-washy person will never be anything. But then they told her good news. You're going to have the Gadol Adar, and you're going to have a Rasha Marusha. Gevaldik! Because a Rasha Marusha could be something someday. But a wishy-washy person just blows with the wind. Anyway, just no extra charge. That's just a side point. So says the Chassam Sofer, the Apikar says, why does it say Amalek's mother in the Torah? So we say, obviously it's for a very important reason. Because the Torah doesn't say Avraham's mother. And you would think we would need to know who Avraham's mother was. So apparently whatever the Torah writes is for a very, very important reason. Because you see the Torah omitted very historic individuals and it doesn't even talk about them. So if it shows to speak about Amalek's mother, it must be for a very important reason. And then Chassam Sofer gives us some more Kabbalistic information, again, for your do-it-at-home for attempts. And that is if you need to make an incantation, like you need to diffuse a witch. You know how it is, sometimes you're dealing with witches in the attic, or soothsayers, or necromancers. You know how it is in the 5 towns. You never know who you... And you need to diffuse them. So in order to diffuse them, you need to know their mother's name. So how are you going to diffuse Haman? Right? So we need to know... how are we going to diffuse Amalek? We need to know his mother's name. But we would never need to diffuse Avraham Avinu, so therefore the Torah doesn't say his mother's name. Okay, Rabbi, so this is all background.
We want to know if they want to name maybe their kids after such a person.
Amaslai?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's on the top 10 list of...
A Yenta is better?
Actually not. No. Okay.
Avraham Avinu's mother is a Choshev.
So speaking about Avraham Avinu's mother, so this is really the opening, the Pesach to tonight's subject. Who exactly is this woman, Amasla'i bas Karnebo? So obviously the natural place to look would be the Ariza and Sefer Eov, right? That would be the first place we would look. The commentary of the Ariza to Sefer Eov, the Shar HaPsukim, it's also brought in the Ariza and Likutei Torah. And the Ariza starts off with a principle that is pretty well known, and that is when Adam ate from the first fruit, which was not an apple. Only Steve Jobs says it was an apple. But according to Chazal, it was either a chita, a te'ena, a gefen, an esrog. Fine. And he ate it. At that moment, the forces of evil, we'll call them the klipos, took hostage all the holy souls. And they will not release them unless they see that an avera is about to be done. So they figure, let's sully this soul forever, and we'll release the soul through the ma'isa avera so that the avera will contaminate the soul. And that's what happened with the soul of Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu's soul was trapped by the dark side, like all the holy souls. And that's why Avraham Avinu is called the Ger Tzedek, because he was literally had to convert from the dark side. And there was a man by the name of Terach. What did Terach do for a living? He sold idols. Yeah? When he would come home, his wife would say, Terach. Now what was his wife's name? Amasla'i. Amasla'i said, Terachol, how is business? So Terach would say, thank God. That's what he would say, right? And Terach would sell idols, and he was an Oved Avodah Zarah, as she was. There were a couple of rishos. Yeah? Now, they did something worse, and that is Amasla'i says the Ari's Megala was a Nida. And Terach lived with her when she was a Nida. So the Ariza and the Mefarshei Ari ask, what do you mean all Gentiles are Nida? They don't go to the mikvah. You know, if maybe they know how nice it is, maybe they would start going, but they don't go. So what's this idea that Terach was living with his wife when she was a Nida? Says Ari, but at least a Gentile wouldn't live with the woman while she's actively in her state of vest, menstruating. But Terach was not makbid. We see even Lavan was careful not to go near a woman who was a Nida, even though he wasn't married to her. When Rachel said, Derech Noshim Alai, so Lavan, Ramban says the Gentiles understood that a Nida was considered contaminated. She gave off toxic fumes or something. That's what the Ramban writes. Okay, what that means exactly is beyond the scope. Again, this is not meant in any derogatory. I'm just telling you what was the practice of the Gentiles in the ancient world. Anyway, says the Ari, Terach lived with Amasla'i when she was a Nida. At that moment, the dark side said this is a perfect moment to release the neshama of Avraham Avinu. He will then be eternally contaminated, and we don't have to worry. But, says the Ari, the way this works is that there's a phenomenon in this world very often. A tzaddik will be a ben Rasha or a ben Amaretz. Why? Because otherwise the klipa will not release the holy soul. This is the concept of mi yitain tamei mitahar. By the way, this is not the Ariza invention. This is a medrash, the first medrash in Parshas Chukas. The Ramchal wrote a sefer on this. I believe it's called Megillas Sisarim. And this is an idea that is advanced and explained by the Ari. Mi yitain tahar mitame. That at times, the tzaddik will be born out of a maisa which appears to be rishus. So, Terach lived with Amasla'i when Amasla'i was actively a Nida, and that's when Avraham Avinu was born. So Terach needs tikkun, and Amasla'i needs tikkun. Amazingly, the tikkun of Terach is Terach came back to this world in the guise of, he was reincarnated as Eiv. And all the Yisurei Eiv were because Terach lived with Amasla'i as a Nida. But Amaslai also needed tikkun, and she came back to this world. Amazingly, says as the Arizal, as Dina. Dina bas Yaakov was the mother of Avraham Avinu. Okay? Now, then, you see, I actually made a mistake at first, but she didn't come back again. Dina then married Eiv. Not she came back as Eishes Eiv. Dina married Eiv. Eov's wife was Dina. On the Ksuba it says, the Habachar Hachosh of Eov, Bas Gila, Dina. Okay? Now the way Amasla'i got her tikkun was that she was then violated by Shechem as a nida, and that violation actually was a tikkun. In other words, you were not nizar to live with terach when you were a tahar, you were going to be violated as a nida. Now the Ariza says another rule. The rule is like this, it's an amazing diuk. It says about a nida that if a man will live with a nida, it says in Vayikra, Perak Tezvav, Pasuk Chav Daled. By the way, this shiur is not for a general audience. So if you need a Dvar Torah for Friday night, come to me later. I have a very nice Verdlach. This is, this is for a mature audience. I'm just saying, avoid this subject at the Shabbos Suda. What did the Rav speak about? Last week he spoke about, what did we speak about last week?
Noach.
What? Noach. What did we speak about? About Shabbos. Bereshis was also good shiur. You could go to reruns of Lech Lecha, but I'm just pointing that out. So, fine. The pasuk says in Vayikra that somebody who's bayal a nida v'tehi nidasa alav. Literally, if she's a nida, but the Ariza is medayik, and we're going to see the Chida quotes this in no less than 7 different places. V'tehi nidasa alav, that when a man is over the chayve krisus of nida, he sucks out of the woman her tumas nida, and he cleanses her from it. That's the diuk of the Ariza. Utehi nidasai alav. The nidus then goes on him. So, for her living with terach when she was a nida, the tikkun was she was violated by Shechem. Shechem then cleansed her of her tumah, and now she's eligible to marry Eov. Now, Eov suffers. Why does Eov suffer? Because Terach lived with Amasla'i as a nida. And the Arizal added, he also lived with her against her will. That was another chiddush of the Ari. So therefore he needs tikkun. Now the Zayar says the punishment of somebody who lives with a nida is you get saras. And therefore, Eov had shchin, he had saras, but she didn't suffer because she was already niskan through shchem. Okay, that's the Arizal. The Arizal and Sefer Eov. Okay? Mi lanu gado me'ari. Who else could reveal this to us other than the Ariza? This is what the Ariza writes in a number of places. Comes the Chida, Maran, Ga'oin Uzeinu, Reb Chaim Yosef David Azulai, one of my favorite all-time Gedolim. He writes this in no less than 7 places. In the Midbar Kedemos, in Mareches Taf, he brings down the Ari Bekitzer, that Avraham Avinu's mother lived with Terach Benidasa. Therefore, he had to come back as a Gilgal of Eov. She came back as Dina. She was cleansed by Shechem. V'tehi nidasa alav. She was cleansed by him. Her tumah went to Shechem. Says the Chidan Dvash Lafi. You know where the name Dina comes from? Nida. It's beautiful as long as you don't know anyone with that name. Right? That's where it comes from. But mastama means it had a tikkun, meaning the rearrangement of the oisiyos means that l'chayr also the letter yud somehow the letter yud represents a Kadosh Baruch Hu, represents Olam Haba. Somehow the letter yud probably contributed to the tikkun. That's what the Chida adds in the Dvash Lafi. Okay, now this is where the shiur came from. This everything I said now is working backwards. The Chida in the Sefer Choymas Tanakh says, and when I started being Maver Sedra on Sunday, this was my first question. Of all places in Eretz Yisrael where Avraham Avinu wants to go, his first stop is Shechem. Why is his first stop Shechem?
He didn't know where he was.
I mean, he got lost. That's not a safe place to get lost.
He didn't know where.
Imagine you get off the plane, and an hour later you fall asleep on the bus. Where am I? You're in Nablus, pal. Yeah, not a good idea.
He didn't know where to throw.
So Reb Sender, when you go on a trip, who's the first person you need to think about? Your mother. You always have to think about your mother. So says the Choymas Tanakh, says the Chida. Avraham Avinu, he realizes his roots. He realizes where he comes from. He comes from Terach. He comes from Amaslai das Karnebo. He knows she needs tikkun. So the first stop in Eretz Yisrael, he goes ad Mekayim Shechem. To do what? To daven for his mama. The first thing on everyone's mind has to always be my mother. What could I do for my mother? That's very nice, right? You thought we're going with all this Kabbalah stuff. That's a nice lesson. You go somewhere, you always have, your mother has to be first and foremost on your mind. The first place that Avraham Avinu, now you don't, just say the punchline here. Don't go through all the background. Just say, we learned from this week's Parsha that the first, without, okay. That says the Chidah, that's why Avraham Avinu went to Shechem, because he was mispalel that his mother should have tikkun. Says the Chidah, the gematria of Ad Mekayim Shechem is 620, is the same gematria as Lesakein Aim, to fix the mother. That's the Chidah. Says the Chidah in Parshas Miketz, so Avraham Avinu, he's mispalel, and ultimately Amaslai has a tikkun. Through who? Through Dina. How? Shechem violated her. Out of Shechem and Dina, they have a little Meidula. What's her name? Osnas. What kind of name is Osnas? Osnas, says the Chidah, Rashi Tevois, Amaslai sige nidasa tikna. Amaslai fixed whatever impurities of nida she had in her. That's the Chidah in the Chomas Tanakh, Parshas Miketz. There's something called Masechta Sofrim. The Chidah Masechta Sofrim wrote a Perush on Masechta Sofrim called Kisei Rachamim. And the Chidah is very busy with this teaching of the Ari, that Amaslai bas Karnebo need a tikkun for living with Terach as a nida. And he says this teaching of the Ari answers up many, many questionable stories in the Chumash. For example, most notably, V'Yakov shama ki timei Dina bita. Yaakov heard that Dina was violated. Uvanav hayos mekneo basada, and the kids were with the cattle. What was Yaakov Avinu's reaction? Outrage? Pain? Tsar? Worry? Distress? No, nothing. V'hechrishla. He's quiet. What does the Gemara say? Shtika kahida. Why is Yaakov Avinu so calm about what happened to Dina? Furthermore, asked the Chidah and the Kisei Rachamim, how could such a thing happen to Dina? Such a tzaddik as Dina? How could such a thing happen to her? Says the Chidah, Yaakov was quiet because Yaakov knew it had to happen. It had to happen for her, the tikkun of his great-grandmother, Amaslai bas Karnebo. So Yaakov didn't react. And he waited until the Shvatim came home, and he told them. And the only reason the Shvatim were angry is because the Shvatim said he could have done it in a nicer way. There are nicer ways, l'sakein aim. You know, he could have figured out a better way to do this. That's the Chidah. You know, the Pele Yoetz wrote a sefer on Chumash called Elef HaMagen. Elef HaMagen has a very interesting diuk, in a nuance in the pasuk. By the episode of Dina, it says, Vateitze Dina, bas Leah, Ashar Yolda Yaakov, which we typically read, Dina went out, the daughter of Leah, that she was born to Yaakov. But it could also be translated very literally, Dina went out, Ashar Yolda Yaakov. She gave birth to Yaakov. Dina gave birth to Yaakov. Dina gave birth to Yaakov. Says the Pele Yoetz, yeah. Dina gave birth to Yaakov. Dina is the great-grandmother of Yaakov, because Dina is Amasla'i bas Karnebo. So, through this tradition from the Ariza, in fact, Dina gave birth to Yaakov. And then there's another interesting Kabbalistic tradition about Amasla'i bas Karnebo, and this comes from the Ramami Pano. So the Gemara says in Gittin, on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Beis, the Gemara says a story about a woman and her 7 sons that I think many people say, oh, it's Chana v'Shiva Baneha, but I don't think it was Chana. It was Isha v'Shiva Baneha. And this woman, the Caesar wanted the 7 sons to bow down to him. So the first one was Moser Nefesh HaKadosh Hashem, and the second one wouldn't bow down, and the third one wouldn't bow down. And finally, it came the 7th son, and the 7th son said, you're kidding me? You think I would bow down? I swore to God, I'll never exchange God for any other God. God swore to me, he'll never exchange Israel. So the Caesar said, you know what, look, this is what we'll do. Here's the plan. I'll take off my signet ring, I'll drop it on the floor, you're going to pick it up, you'll make believe it will look like you're makabel my sovereignty, and then we'll call it a day, and it's a win-win situation. So the little kid said, Chaval Lecha, Kesar, you're so worried about your honor, Alachas kama v'kama, we have to worry about the honor of Kudsha Brichu. So the mother says, could I just have my child for one more moment? She kisses the child and she tells the child, when you go upstairs, go to Avraham Avinu, you say to him, you only brought one child on the Mizbeach. I brought 7 children on the Mizbeach. Whereupon she jumps off the roof and a Baskal cries out, Aim Habonim Semecha. Says Ramami Pano, who is this woman who gave up 7 children al Kiddush Hashem? Amasla'i bas Karnebo. She came back because in her first lifetime, she agreed to throw Avraham into the fire, that he should die, not al Kiddush Hashem. She was Oived Avodah Zarah. So now she comes back and she says, okay, sorry, go tell Avraham I got it right this time. It's nice, right? Alvin likes it. Okay. So let's just end with, I think, if you ever looked, again, for you, do it at home, Mikubalim out there, if you ever looked at any Kameya, one of the main names on the Kameyas is Amaslai bas Karnebo, that's like king. If anyone out there writing a Kameya, if you want to make it look authentic, you have to have Amaslai bas Karnebo in there. That's key. Otherwise, you're not. Then you're for sure amateur Mikubal. So Amaslai bas Karnebo is a key Kabbalistic name. In fact, in the Pachad Yitzchak, and this you should remember. Pachad Yitzchak was written by one of the Kadmonim, one of the Italian Mikubalim, not Mikubalim, one of the Italian Gedolim, who wrote the first encyclopedia of Lamdos. It's called Pachad Yitzchak, not to be confused with Rav Hutner. Pachad Yitzchak was written by Rabbi Yitzchak Lamprunti. He wrote it without any computers. He says he found in an ancient document that if you're in trouble with the government, if you want to find favor in the eyes of the government, you have a chveis, you forgot to put a quarter in the meter on Central Avenue. That's the worst thing that should ever happen to somebody. It's a bracha. That's a good bracha. And you want to find favor be'inei hashilton, say 3 times Amaslai bas Karnebo, Amaslai bas Karnebo, Amaslai bas Karnebo. They're going to say, what? Well, the machine was broken or something. Okay. The Chida writes in the Delash Lafi that if you're standing before the Sar or the Shilton and you want to get off the hook, then say Toiv Pa'amim 17 times. Amaslai bas Karnebo. Amaslai bas. Come on, let's do it. Okay? 17 times. In fact, if you ever saw, the Chida has a wondrous sefer. It's called Avodas HaKodesh, which is basically a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. And in the back of it, he has different kontresim. One of the kontresim are Kaf HaChaim. It's called Kaf Achas. So the Chida also writes different skulas there. He says a skula to get off the hook, Lefnei HaShilton, is you say Amaslai bas Karnebo tes vav vez pa'amim, and then he brings from the Ramban, you should say Migdal oiz shem Hashem boy yarotz. Okay, and for further skulais, you could see the Chida Sefer Kaf Achas. So interesting, I saw in the biography of the Kloisenberger Rebbe, there was a testimonial by a Holocaust survivor. His name was Eliezer Steisel. And he says, when the Hungarians came and they took us away to labor camps, I went to the Rebbe for a bracha that I should survive the war. So the Rebbe told me, Im shloish eila yas, if you do the following 3 things, then yishmarcha alekim v'tinatza, you'll be saved. The Rebbe said, always be careful to wear a yarmulke. Always be careful to have your head covered. I guess that means, maybe even when you're sleeping. By the way, do you have to wear a yarmulke when you're sleeping? You don't have to. It's not required lahalach. It's milsa de chasidus. It's a saintly practice. A nice thing to do. It's a good thing to do, but it's not absolutely required. But I guess the Rebbe told him be extra careful. Uvenatilas yadayim, you should always be careful that you have water. Now this is something you see, people make, I don't know where they get this from, that they're in a park, So they have to wash until Yadayim. So what do? They hold the sandwich on the silver foil. Really? There's no such thing. There's no such thing. Torah zu loy tehei machlefes. When God gave us the Torah in Har Sinai, that's not part of the Torah. That's not one of the halachas. Holding the silver foil. You wash your hands. There's something called netilas yadayim. So people then say, okay, I'll use a plastic cup. Mehechitesi, you could use a plastic cup. It's a disposable cup. Charchili, you have to use a real cup. So then people say, I'll use 2 cups. Chacham from the Manashtana, what do you mean 2 cups? What do 2 cups do? If 1 plastic cup don't do nothing, so how does taking 0 plus 0 is oichet 0? It's not ois kahaltin lahalacha that you could use 2 plastic cups. So what do? You bring a cup with you, and you follow the Shulchan Aruch. No, I forgot to bring a cup. So go to the gift shop and buy a cup for $5. What's the big deal? The Shulchan Aruch gives a havtacha that being nizar and netilas yadayim is a shmira for parnasa. At the very least, you'll make at least another $5 that year. That I think we could guarantee that you. Al netilas yadayim is gematria ani, is Rosh Tevas ani. Shulchan Aruch says it's not a. It's brought in the Shulchan Aruch, so you have to be careful on netilas yadayim. Also by kiddush, where does it come from? You can make kiddush on a plastic cup if you live in Biafra or in Africa or in a third world country where there are no cups. So maybe you can make kiddush on a plastic cup. We live in the United States of America. You have more than enough kaisais in your house. You don't even know what to do with all the kaisais in your house. You go to a kiddush, you make kiddush on a normal cup. So I don't have a cup. So do you have to eat? If you want to eat, make sure you have a kais. Disposable is b'diavad at the best. Anyway, and the third thing, the Kloisenberger Rebbe said, cover your head. Netilas yadayim. And say the following 3 things. Yavai hamelach vehamon hayom Rashi Tevas Yud Kei Vav Kei. Say alakad meir aneni, and say Amaslai bas Karnebo. If you do these 3 things, then Yishmarcha Elokim v'tinatzel. God will save you. And he says kachava. So this is definitely as part of 5 things. In other words, if you're in a bad matzav and you're careful to cover your head, and you're careful to wash until Yadayim, and you say Yavai Hamelech v'Haman Hayom, and you say Alakad Meir Aneni, there is evidence that Amaslai bas Karnebo is also a contributing factor. Anyway, so what exactly is the skula of Amaslai bas Karnebo? That's anybody's guess. There's an interesting sefer by Rav Naftali Chaim Gutman called Perushim Nechmadim, and he says that, I'm sure you figured this out already, Amaslai bas Karnebo is Gematria 1162. And now, Amaslai bas Karnebo gave birth to the head of our people, the Rosh Avos Olam. The Gematria of He, Hailida, the Rosh Avos Olam is 1162. The same Gematria as Amaslai bas Karnebo, obviously. Yeah, I knew you figured that one out already. And she gave birth to Avraham Avinu, who was what? Tzadik Katamar Yifrach, is also 1162. And what kind of situation was Avraham born? They wanted to throw him, into the fire as soon as he was born. Avraham Avinu was Umei Ashpois Yorim Evyoin, 1162. So he goes to Eretz Yisrael. What was he mispalo in Eretz Yisrael? Asay Leman Yerushalayim, which is 1162. And what else did he say? He said, Uvnei Oisa Bekarov Biyamenu Binyan Oilam, which is Gematria Amaslai bas Karnebo. So, what exactly the skula is, I don't know, but certainly it's brought in many sources, including the Chidah, in a number of places, that it has a certain power. One of the Perushim on the Ariza says, it's an interesting halacha, lamdas. Let's say a person comes and their wife says, I'm tummy. And an hour later she said, no, just joking. She's tummy. She's tummy. She said she's tummy. Unless she could give a what? An Amasla'i, an excuse why I only said it because you didn't take out the garbage. But it was just an excuse. An Amasla'i. It's a din. If you give an excuse, then it takes off the Shavi Navshi Chaticha de Yisura. So some of the Perushim and Ariza says the name Amaslai comes from the word Amasla'i. She was the excuse to bring Avraham Avinu into the world. In other words, like we said, they didn't want to release his neshama until they saw something that seemed like a davar isser, and that was the excuse to it. So sometimes you're in a tough matzav, and you need an Amaslai, you need a good excuse to get out of it. That excuse might be Amaslai bas Karnebo. But these are some of the behind the scenes of an individual who the Torah does not mention. And the Gemara Bava Basra says her name was Amaslai bas Karnebo. And maybe this is the tshuva to the minim. In other words, when you're in trouble with the minim and you need a tshuva, her name saves the day. But the bottom line is, she comes back as Dina bas Yaakov. Her tikkun was when Shechem violated her. And the Ari and the Chidah says, this fulfilled the concept of Tehini Dasai Alav. It's interesting. The Chidah is Medayik in the Kisei Rachamim. Yaakov heard Kishama. What did Yaakov hear? Kishama Kitime as Dina. Yaakov heard the people saying that he violated her. But says the Chidah, the diuk is, that's what he heard they were saying, he violated her. But according to the Ariyu, Tehini Das Alav, at the end of the day, she was metame him. That's what really happened. Anyway, Rabbi said these are some of Neflois Mitarasenu Akdoisha. Thank you everyone for coming. Have a great evening. Shkaya.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.